All right, good morning. This is going to be our last message on this topic of like a shepherd. I've seen that the form out in the front is getting filled with names, and that is good, that we believe that there are so many capable and wonderful people in this congregation to fill that role, to fill that role of service. So I'm encouraged by that, and soon we will have some elders, and you'll have some people you can go to and talk to and have your questions, all your questions answered and all your problems solved. No. You have some people you can talk to and you can rely on that have your best interest at heart. So as we think about this, I want to think about how we choose a leader. So let's face it, this is America. We do everything by vote. Everything by vote. You may not know this, but when the New Testament was written, people did not get to vote on pretty much anything at all. Everything was already decided for everyone else. Your task was to go with the flow. But that's not how we do things today. We want to take a vote. We want everyone's voice to count, and I think that is a good system. I think that's a good way. But if you ask me, Rob, can you provide a scripture that tells me we should vote on who becomes an elder? I will not be able to provide you one. I don't think I need to provide one. This is just how we do things today. A little different than how it was done. But it would be nice if we had some for sure ways of knowing that we're doing it right. So like if your name's on that list, would it be nice if you left this place, took a wrong turn, saw a bush burning on a hillside and thought, well, that's odd. And you walked up to it and you heard a voice that said, take off your shoes, for this is holy ground. And you approached with your shoes off, and you were informed that you are, in fact, chosen by God to be an elder of the Chula Vista Church of Christ. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? The kind of assurance that you would have. Or if you had put someone's name on that list and they said, hey, I think you did a good job because a burning bush talked to me and told me you were right. That would be kind of nice to have that kind of assurance, that kind of certainty. Right? Or maybe like when King Saul became king, if you've ever read that story in 1 Samuel, it is a fascinating story. I'm convinced it was written when they thought King Saul's line would last forever, because there's so many details about how God picked him, and he was the one. He was handsome. You'll find in the Old Testament sometimes that's a big deal, how someone looked, if they were really good looking, if they were rugged. And unfortunately, if they had a good head of hair, sometimes that was a good sign that they were going to be a good leader. When Saul was picked to be king, their first king, his father's donkeys had gotten away and they had gotten lost. Now, this is a story I can relate to because when I was a child, when I was like 16 or 17, my best friend's cow got away. And we searched for 9 hours for that missing cow. It was a $20,000 cow. You don't just let it wander off. You got to go find that thing. So we spent all day in the rain looking for a lost calf. And I never did find it. He found it eventually on our neighbor's property, curiously surrounded by hay bales so it could not escape. It had been stolen. So I know what it's like to be traversing over hill and vale and across creeks and through the woods looking for animals. Saul was going around looking for his dad's lost donkeys. They're gone so long, he looked at his friend who's with him and says, we better go back because dad's probably done worrying about donkeys, and he started worrying about us. And his friend said, I know what we should do. We should go see the prophet. Can you imagine going to see the prophet of God so he can tell you where your donkeys are? He's looking for his donkeys. He's going to go talk to the prophet of God. Maybe he can tell me where my missing donkeys are. And as he's going, they run to a group of women. The women say, the seer, that's what they used to call prophets back then, the seer. He's located over there, but you better catch him fast because he's on his way to eat the sacrifice. And so they find him on his way to eat the sacrifice. And he says, it is I, it's Samuel. I'm going to anoint you king. And he anoints Saul king. And then he says to Saul, hey, just in case you're doubting that I have the authority to anoint you as king, when you go back to your house, a series of events is going to transpire that is going to let you know that I know what I'm talking about. I am a prophet. You're going to go down this place. You're going to run into some people. They're going to give you some bread. They're going to say this thing to you. It reminds me of how I used to tell people to get to my house. If you wondered, like, I lived out in the country, so yeah, I helped my best friend try and find his cow. And when people wanted to come to my house, there were a series of landmarks you had to look for to get there. When you get into Bell Valley, you'll see the fire station. Turn left at the street in front of the fire station. Nobody knows what the street is called. You're going to follow that up a hill, down a hill, around a sharp turn. You're going to see a Methodist chapel on your right-hand side with a cemetery in the back. When you get there, go past it. It's the first dirt road on your right. You're going to turn right. You're going to go past a trailer, another little road, another house. When you start to go past that house, you're going to turn right again, right? That way you know that you're going the right way. And when you land at my house, you're like, well, this is Rob's house. Wouldn't it be nice if when you're picking an elder and you started to doubt whether or not you were an elder, someone like me or someone could say, here's how you're going to know that you are supposed to be an elder. You're going to go to the grocery store. There's going to be a woman there in the fruit aisle. She's going to ask you where the bananas are, right? That's what he tells them. And then you could go home and say, I guess I was supposed to be an elder after all. The certainty that I have. Probably not going to have that. Probably not going to have elders who are passing on the eldership to their sons and their sons after them and their sons after them, like the kings would. Or maybe just roll the dice and see, like put your names on a straw. Do you remember when Judas had died and Peter was like, we need to replace Judas. I'm going to cobble together a couple passages. We're going to convince ourselves we need to replace them. We're going to come up with a couple good names of people that we trust. We're going to basically put their names in a hat or put their names on straws. Whoever gets the long straw was the one that we pick. Is that how we do it? We got a lot of names on there. Do we just put all their names on a piece of paper, put them in a hat, mix them around, pull some names out? I sense that you guys don't like that idea. You want to go back? Let's vote on it. Let's just vote on it. How are we going to do this? What is the right way? What I want to do now is read from Titus. I would also do another sermon next week on from 1 Timothy, but when we did the women in the church, we already covered that passage pretty thoroughly, I feel like. So I just want to end with this passage from Titus, which is almost identical to Timothy, actually. Because Paul has been traveling and he's been setting up churches and he's been setting up congregations and he's been leaving and going to another place and setting up congregations. And when he arrives at Crete, he leaves Titus in Crete and says, now I'm going to leave to you probably the hardest task of all. You're familiar with the word Cretan? You ever been called a Cretan? Good. It's not a good name. It is not a good name to be called. You don't be called a Cretan. They're liars, they're thieves, they're brutes, they're evildoers. If someone says, you're a Cretan, that's not good. You don't say, oh, thanks. No. It's a bad thing. He tells Titus, I'm going to leave you with the Cretans. And you're going to set up some elders in these congregations, in these little towns that we've been evangelizing to. Good luck, Titus. Here you go. Here's what you're looking for. The reason I left you, Titus, in Crete was that you might put in order what was left unfinished and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. So, technically speaking, if you were to say, Rob, produce a Bible verse that tells us how do we actually pick elders, this is the only example we have. It's where an individual like me just goes through and says, you, and you, I want you to be elders. I think you got what it takes. And then you say yes or no. That's kind of how it would go biblically. I actually talked to one member and they said, would you be willing to do that? And I said, no. Because that's just not how we do things anymore. But Paul and Titus are living in another time. And he says, I'm going to leave you with the undesirable task of traveling from town to town in Crete with all the Cretans and finding elders. An elder must be blameless, faithful to his wife, a man whose children believe and are not open to the charge of being wild and disobedient. Can you think of some biblical characters who were told they were blameless? Noah. Good job, everybody. You guys are awful quiet today. Who's my favorite Bible character? Job. Job is another one. Other than Jesus, those are the only two people who were ever called blameless. They're not sinless, but they are blameless. The trajectory of their life is always headed in a godly direction, despite mishaps and beside missteps. They're always headed and trying to live a godly life. And Paul says to Titus, you need to find someone whose direction of their life is always headed toward godliness. A man who's faithful to his wife. Some of the attributes you're going to see should go without saying. You do not want to pick an elder who is unfaithful to their wife. Just doesn't even make sense. Lead our church. Be unfaithful to your wife. It doesn't make sense. Must be blameless, faithful to his wife, a man whose children believe. The reason these details are important is because if someone's going to oversee and lead and serve the family of God, maybe a good way of determining what kind of person they are is to see how they've led their own family. So you look and you see. Now in Timothy, there's an extra addition to this, and it says, you should go into the community where they live and talk to the people that live around them and that work with them and ask them, are they blameless and upright? Are they the kind of person we should have lead at our church? Because it is very easy to get up here like I'm doing right now and make you think, because I'm up here right now, that I would be a wonderful elder. But go and talk to the people that know me when I'm not here. When I don't have my hair done all just perfect. Talk to my neighbors. Talk to the people that used to work with me. Talk to my former employers. Would they be shocked if you said, we're considering Rob as an elder? Would they go, Rob is an elder? I mean, sorry, Rob is an elder. Or would they say, that makes a lot of sense. Someone who's blameless and upright. Someone who's blameless and upright. Since an overseer manages God's household, he must be blameless. Not overbearing, not quick-tempered, not given to drunkenness. I think a lot of these attributes make sense. You probably will not ask a known drunkard to be the elder of your church. But remember, Titus is in Crete. They are new to Christianity. Getting drunk in Crete was not that big of a deal. Being a drunkard in Crete was not considered to be all that bad of a thing. Being unfaithful to your wife in Crete was not all that bad of a thing. Being angry all the time. Do you understand? Titus has a challenge before him. He's got to find some guys that have accepted the way of Jesus to the point where they've rejected the ungodly culture around them. This is not easy. Not violent, not pursuing dishonest gain. You want to pick someone who's honest and trustworthy and not greedy. Rather, he must be hospitable. Someone who's open arms to you. Someone who always welcomes you. Someone who is kind to you. Someone who invites you into their home. Someone who is there when you have a question. Someone when they call you, they're not like, oh, this is always a horrible time. No, someone who is open. Open to serve. One who loves what is good. Who is self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. I do not envy Titus. Honestly, we have it way easier than Titus had it. Way easier than Titus had it. Because we have been, perhaps our entire lives and within our own culture, we've kind of been developing at least some sort of attitude of what it means to live a Christian life. And for those in Crete, this was all brand new. So much more difficult. He must hold firmly to the trustworthy message as it has been taught. so that he can encourage others by sound doctrine and refute those who oppose it. That word sound doctrine, that it sounds so old school to me, and I know, I lead new songs, and I don't like old phrases sometimes, but the word sound doctrine, it actually means healthy teaching. Healthy teaching. Someone who knows the will of God, at least to some extent, and can share with you what it is that God actually expects of you, what it is God actually requires of you, gives you advice and counsel on the steps that you should take, and opposes people who disagree with the will of God. For there are many rebellious people, full of meaningless talk and deception, especially those of the circumcision group. And this is where we get into it with Paul. What is he talking about when he says sound doctrine or this healthy teaching? He's talking about the fact that we all come into the family of God the exact same way, whether they are Jew or Gentile. God accepts us all the same. Gentile people do not have to receive circumcision to be included in the family of God. God takes them just the way they are. And he says anything else is just meaningless talk. Meaningless talk. They must be silenced because they're disrupting whole households by teaching things they ought not to teach, and that for the sake of dishonest gain. So he sends a warning to Titus. He says, there are people in these congregations who are already seeking dishonest gain, and they're teaching things they ought not to teach. You cannot pick them to be your elders. People who are motivated by falsehoods and greed because they want to serve themselves instead of the people. I once went to a church service many, many years ago it was right on the border. I can't remember if it was West Virginia or Ohio, so give me 10 minutes, I'll think of it. No, it doesn't matter. Right, somewhere back there by the Ohio River, I go to a church service and I sit down and the entire service is an MLM presentation. Do you know what that is? Multi-level marketing. Triangle business structure. The entire service. The pastor is up in front of everyone trying to encourage, and they had about 350, 400 people, encourage everyone to sign up under him to sell prepaid phone cards. Why? Because he knew he was going to make a killing if he could get all 400 people to sign up under him. He probably also believed that if they could get some people to sign up too, maybe they'd make some money. And he thought to himself, we're going to have a church full of rich, wealthy people. The giving is going to go up. We're all going to be making money. It's going to be crazy good. He's motivated by greed. And he's willing to manipulate, be strong-handed with, coercive, manipulative to the sheep, to take advantage of them, to make them want to be greedy too. Paul says you cannot pick someone like that to be a leader in your church. That is not a servant. Jesus says in Mark, I did not come to be served, but to serve and to give my life. And as shepherds, and actually as all Christians, that is our task as well. To not be overcome by greed and use God's family, God's flock as a means to my greedy end. And this might sound like a moot point, but things happen sometimes within churches where people will come and they'll have certain things they could possibly give to the church or give to this. And sometimes church leaders will say, you should give that to the church instead of to your family. It happens. You want leaders when you're in a sticky situation who are going to guide you with truth and not greed. Guide you to do what is right instead of what's right for them. One of Crete's own prophets has said it. Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, lazy gluttons. And Paul says, this saying is true, right? Good luck, Titus. This is who you're dealing with. This is the society that we've started churches in. He says it kind of funny, like it's kind of a funny thing for someone to say about their own culture, but this prophet says, yeah, this is true. This is true. This is how they are. Therefore, rebuke them sharply, so they will be sound in the faith and will pay no attention to Jewish myths. You see, it all comes back to circumcision, this sound doctrine. Or to the merely human commands of those who reject truth. I don't know, how many of you have been told recently that you need to be circumcised to be a member of God's family? Raise your hand. Yeah, this is not something we're dealing with, right? But we do deal with false doctrine. We do deal with people who are greedy and will teach false doctrine so they can line their own pockets. That does happen. And so part of our task is to find someone that we trust, who will tell us to do what is right, who will help us make a godly decision based on Christ's teachings and not our own selfish desires. Prosperity gospel comes to mind. What should I do with this inheritance I got? You should give it all to the church. Sow into the seed of this ministry and God will turn it 100-fold. And right, just playing on the greed that we all tend to have to some extent, this desire for more that we all have. Paul says there are people who are rebellious and they are liars and they're there. Titus, watch out. Don't pick someone like that. Pick someone who is trustworthy and is not easily swayed from the truth. You see, when we want to have shepherds like the Good Shepherd, we want to look for someone who shows leadership in their family. In our modern culture, and this has probably always been true, but we have sometimes thought if someone's a really good business owner, if they really run a business well and they've got lots of money and they have all this worldly success, then they must be a great leader. That is not true. Church is not a business. Church is a family. This is God's family. You want someone who's good at taking care of a family. Taking care of a business is one thing. Taking care of God's family and God's children is quite another thing. It doesn't matter if they've run a successful business. And it doesn't matter if they don't run a successful business. It's not even a point to look at. We need to look deeper. Remember how they said about Saul? Saul was so good looking. Sometimes we want to find that good looking business person. They look so good. They might be a great elder. But you're going to have to dive deeper than that to know. You can start by talking to their family. Start by talking to their family. Without blame and without greed. You don't want someone leading the church that has a life full of sin, no desire to get rid of it, and is only looking out for themselves. You don't want that kind of leader in anything that you do, least of all the church. You want someone who is a lover of what is right and a lover of what is good, not someone who is a lover of whatever money they can extort out of you. That is not what you want. You want someone who actually cares about you. Someone who actually cares. You want someone who knows what it means to follow Jesus. This is by far the most important point. Someone that knows what it means to follow Jesus, because as we walk this Christian walk together, there will be times when we simply do not know what to do. And wouldn't it be nice if there was someone among us, a sage, a mentor, a servant, all the things we've talked about, who could come alongside and say, maybe I can help you figure this out. And you look at them and you know they're not perfect, but they are trying every day to live in the way of Jesus. That's what you're going to want, because there will come a time, and you've probably already had times like this, where you really truly needed someone to come beside you and sit with you and help you and love you and serve you and give you guidance and give you counsel. And there wasn't anyone. And that is not something that we can do as a church for much longer. We need some people in here to love us, to help us, people that know what it means to not be served, but to serve and to give their life. We need some people that know what it means to pick up their cross and follow Jesus. Those will be our elders. I'm convinced of it. We have nothing but good things coming with our eldership. I'm excited about it. Youth 1050, if you want to head out with Brandon. Just take a second and look. We have 7 teenagers that just got up. I know in some churches, 7, I have 7 kids in my family. Yeah, that might be true. But it's such wonderful progress for us. Do you know why? I'll wait for Brandon to leave so I don't embarrass him. I mean, it's going to go on YouTube, but Do you know why that's happening? Because a few months ago, I came to Brandon and I said, Brandon, would you like to lead the youth in a short class right after my sermon? We're going to call it Youth 1050. It's something we did before. COVID kind of put the squash on it, but I want to bring it back. And Brandon said, yeah, I can do that. And that's why we have teens coming that sometimes found it hard to come before. We need more things like that. We need more people who are willing to serve like that. Because we have junior high kids. We have elementary age kids. We have younger kids. Who's going to step up like Brandon did and say, I'll take care of that? We have more opportunities to serve here than just as an elder or as a deacon. And we're all called to be servants. So think about it. Think about it, all right? Art?